You want to talk about my current hyperfixation? Because I do. So I've been getting back into the My Little Pony fandom, and I didn't realize just how much cool stuff there was. I mean, I was big into it when I was in like middle school and high school, kind of grew out of it by the time I got to college, right? But there were so many good things about this fandom. I mean, the animations, the songs, like fan works. I mean, Jesus Christ, bronies are talented. I mean, there's also like the dark side of the fandom, but there's one of those for every fandom. But this is, I'm about to attempt to unravel probably one of the most infamous fanfics to come out of the My Little Pony fandom. And I'm gonna be honest, if you were on the internet in about circa 2013, you probably couldn't escape My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. It was literally everywhere. But you also probably have seen this image and this one at least once. Or you've seen at least this picture of Pinkie Pie. Buckle up, folks. It's about to get weird. Unraveling Cupcakes and all of the stories that spun off from it, at least the ones that I can remember. So buckle up, because things are gonna get weird. But first, I grew out this beard for the thumbnail. Hopefully it looks good. It's getting really itchy, so I'm gonna go shave before we really get into things. So with the magic of editing, I shall be back. The Cupcakes fanfiction is speculated to have first been posted on 4chan sometime in January of 2011. Though the date of the original post remains unknown, a canonical reference to episode 12 in the fanfic suggests that the earliest possible date of the original post is January 7th, 2011, which would predate the earliest instance of a My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fanfiction in Junior Speedsters Forever. This is either going to be really dark or really cringe. Let's delve a bit deeper, shall we? So I looked, but I am not able to find anything other than like repostings of the fic. It's not on Equestria Daily under Sergeant Sprinkles. I couldn't even find it on Equestria Daily. There's no instance of the 4chan post. Really, the only postings I could find were on fanfiction.net or like a redone version on Fimfiction. It's just, the original is just gone. All original instances are just gone. The story starts with Pinkie Pie inviting Rainbow Dash over for some baking. Pinkie Pie gives Dash a roofie cupcake that knocks her out, and when she wakes up, she's strapped to a table in a dark room. Pinkie Pie shows up and turns the lights on, showing that the room is, and I quote, decorated with a typical but twisted Pinkie Pie flair. Colorful streamers of dried entrails fluttered around the ceiling. Brightly painted skulls of all sizes were attached to the walls, and organs done up in pastels filled with helium were tied to the backs of chairs. Pinkie Pie proceeds to torture Rainbow Dash by cutting off her cutie marks, and ripping off her wings. Pinkie Pie also injects Dash with adrenaline through the process to keep her conscious. Pinkie hammers hot nails into Dash's limbs. It's honestly just horrible stuff. It eventually comes to an end with Pinkie cutting Rainbow Dash open like a fish and removing her organs while she's still awake. The worst part about it, though, is that she makes me unable to take it seriously. I mean, aside from the fact that it's pastel ponies, is the fact that Pinkie Pie makes puns throughout the torture, which admittedly is in character for her, but, it's still weird, So Rainbow Dash dies, and Pinkie laments, hoping she would have lasted longer, and that's where the story ends. Or is it? In fact, the original epilogue of the story actually has a scene where Apple Bloom, Applejack's little sister, shows up as Pinkie Pie's assistant, and then proceed to do the same thing to a bully character by the name of Silver Spoon, who bullied Apple Bloom for not having her cutie mark yet. It honestly just kind of comes out of nowhere, to be honest, but more on that later, trust me. She's on the board for a reason. Cupcake goes on to live on in infamy, inspiring fan animations, fan art. Hell, it even went on to inspire its own Tumblr blog. Yeah, you remember when those were popular? In fact, the show actually references Cupcakes indirectly in the Season 8 episode Yakety Sax. I mean, you can't tell me that it wasn't at least an indirect reference, right? I mean, a dark Pinkie Pie making cupcakes with Rainbow Dash, and they have her make this face? It's kinda hard not to think it's a reference, right? Or maybe I'm just overthinking things, but I would never do that. Some of the things that was the most popular trend for a while was people writing their own alternative endings for Cupcakes. Some of them are actually pretty well written, but I don't want to get into them because this video is going to be long enough. Alternate endings aside, it's pretty cut and dry. But what if this one story caused a spark that would ignite a rocket to insanity. Yeah, you get it? 'Cause it's the name of the From what I could find, Rocket to Insanity was first posted to fanfiction.net by a user under the name of Deathbolt on October 9th, 2012, and is a, quote, story inspired by Sgt. Sprinkles' Cupcakes fanfic. And it's actually pretty interesting, and one of my personal favorites. From the jump, the story frames the events of Cupcakes as a reoccurring nightmare that has been plaguing Rainbow Dash for some time. The one with the cupcakes. Flashes of memory lance through her head, her wings being hacked off, then ripped from their sockets, needles plunged into her beating heart, adrenaline injected into her body to keep her awake and alert as the torture went on. The smell of her own flesh cooking, the sight of her own blood and gore spilling from her surgically incised stomach. The mastermind behind her terror toying with those glistening organs like they were party favors. If you couldn't already tell from that little excerpt, the descriptive writing in this one is actually shockingly good, almost to the point of being comedic at times. One thing that kind of made me laugh is that the story recontextualizes the reason Rainbow Dash snaps all the time as it being because she doesn't get any sleep at night due to this reoccurring nightmare. Over the next few weeks, every pony in Ponyville, gotta use the proper verbiage when we're talking about ponies, you know what I mean, starts to notice the gradual decline in Rainbow Dash's physical and mental state. But most of them just brush it off as her being too headstrong or too standoffish. All the while, she pushes all of her friends away. Until the day Rainbow Dash finally snapped. So Pinkie Pie invites Rainbow Dash over to good old Sugar Cube Corner. I mean, the story calls it Candy Corner. It's actually Sugar Cube Corner, but, you know, it's neither here nor there. Yeah, and you see where this is going. And honestly, the descriptive writing used in this scene is really good, if not a bit comical with the theatrics. Here, let me show you what I mean. Let me quote you some of this. What happened next was a blur. The memories fuzzy in Dash's mind as Pinkie tried to make sense of the sudden attack on her person. Dash let out a chilling mix between a wail and a scream, catching the Earth Pony off guard as the blade darted forward, slashing through her neck, severing vein and artery as a gout of crimson issued forth from the wound. Shock and surprise registered on Pinkie Pie's face as she gurgled, blood hemorrhaging from that wound, staining her pink fur with the red hue of her life essence. Again and again that silver blade struck out, Dash's speed not restricted to her flight as she plunged the blade into the filly before at a rapid pace. Sobbing hysterically as she carved the squirming and flailing filly up, through breast, through bone, Pinkie Pie's struggle slowly faded as her blood was spilt onto the floor of the Candy Corner's kitchen, pooling around her, splattering the Pegasus atop her with her hot, red fluid. As those slowly glazing eyes stared up at Rainbow Dash, the strikes of the blade grew slower and slower, the Pegasus finally plunging the implement deep into Pinkie's chest, spearing through the filly's heart, ending her party once and for all. Yeah, pretty gruesome way to go out if you ask me, but turns out it was all a dream. Yeah, kind of a cop-out, because, and I quote, deep inside, she knew she'd never hurt Pinkie Pie, and the party-loving Perth Pony would never hurt her either. Just, you know, I mean, I get it, it's ponies, whatever. Funnily enough, Rocket to Insanity would actually spin off into its own series with its own sequels written by the user Don't Wake the Neighbor, and those have nothing to do with Cupcakes. But honestly, those could be their own video in itself if you want that, or if I get the sudden urge to make it, like with this video. And now that we have that one outlier out of the way, we'll now move on to the more direct sequels to Cupcakes. Cherry Sauce, also known as Cupcakes 2, was posted to fanfiction.net, which is the My Little Pony equivalent of fanfiction.net, on October 11th, 2012, by the user by the name of Cupcake Survivor. And according to Fanfiction, they made their account a day before posting Cherry Sauce, and then was last seen online on October 31st, 2012. Just a little ominous there. This story tries to explain the weird ending of the original Cupcakes with Apple Bloom showing up, and it doesn't waste any time. Literally, the opening line of the story is, Pinkie Pie had just finished killing Rainbow Dash. Alright, so we're just picking up right where the first one left off. No time wasted. Pinkie Pie, heads upstairs from the murder basement, but make sure to take her cannibal dress off first. Gotta take that off. You can explain away all the blood and ichor. The wing dress. No, you can't explain that away. There's no way. Just what are people gonna say? That's just Pinkie Pie being Pinkie Pie. Actually, you know what? They might actually take that as an explanation in this world. Turns out she forgot to close down Sugar Cube Corner for the day, as I'm assuming is the Cutie Mark Crusaders walk in. I'm not entirely sure about that though, because the story only describes it as 3 familiar fillies, one of which being Apple Bloom, which I can only infer that the other 2 are Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle. But it doesn't really matter who the other 2 are, because they run off when they see Pinkie Pie, who lets out a loud scream. Except for Apple Bloom. Apple Bloom doesn't run away, she just instead walks up to Pinkie Pie and laughs, saying that it's a little early for Nightmare Night, don't you think? Which is like, the in-universe, like the equestrian equivalent of Halloween. And it's just weird. She just says like, oh, what are you covered in? It's a little early for Nightmare Night, said the young filly jokingly. It's, cherry sauce. Want to try some? Pinkie Pie grinned. Apple Bloom trotted up to the pink pony and licked the offered hoof. She paused as she actually drooled. Oh, that's the sweetest cherry sauce I ever had. She licked all the way up to Pinkie Pie's shoulder before snapping out of it. Yeah, I'm also going to point out at this point that Apple Bloom speaks with a southern drawl, so the author opted to write it out phonetically as ah. A-H, so that way, it's like, I was there. But it gets pretty goofy later on, and you'll see what I mean. So Apple Bloom asks how the sauce gets made, and Pinkie Pie tells her that if she comes back the next day, she'll show her how the sauce gets made. Take a second to guess how this is going to go in the comments, and while you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button? Go ahead. I'll wait. Back to the pastel psychopaths. Should really call my therapist after this. So Apple Bloom comes back and gets the good old roofie cupcake and wakes up in the familiar room. Yeah, the one with the bones and the chairs and the banner with, life's a party. Right, and you remember the one. Yeah, you remember. Pinkie Pie then proceeds to butcher another pony in front of Apple Bloom, who is strapped to a table. And I quote, about an hour in, Apple Bloom must have lost her mind because the jokes Pinkie Pie was making were funny. Really funny. She got particularly giggly after she removed the stallion's hooves and strapped them to her own hooves and pretended to be Princess Celestia. She laughed like she had gone mad, but truly this was the funniest thing ever. She even began to like the decorations. I mean, they were fitting, even like they were the only things that could be acceptable in this sort of game. Right when the stallion lost consciousness, Pinkie Pie unchained Apple Bloom. And Apple Bloom walked over to the table with the filly heads on it, picked up one from her class, twist. Ah, look who's a blank flank now. You don't even have a flank. She smiled and tossed the head back on the table. Ah yes, a totally normal response to the murder basement from the tiny yellow child. So she starts helping Pinkie Pie with her baking, and it eventually leads to her getting her cutie mark, which is a cupcake. Isn't that great? Isn't that beautiful? Apple Bloom just acts so out of pocket here. I mean, listen to this. He gurgled in dismay as Apple Bloom began to stab the abdominal sac, piercing the organs and spraying blood all over her fur. She laughed as she watched the life leave the stallion's eyes. She bit into his muscle and chewed on the meat as it filled her mouth. Oh my, I think I love making cupcakes. She had a wicked smile. Honestly, I think she might have just got mad cow disease from Rainbow Dash's blood, because this is just not normal behavior. Then we end up where the first cupcakes ended, with them preparing to kill Silver Spoon. Which brings us to the next story. Yeah, let me just pull up my notes here. Yeah, it's pretty much the same process as cupcakes. It's, but Apple Bloom does it. She bashes in Silver Spoon's brain. She bashes Silver Spoon's head in, rips her brain out before butchering her, and I quote, she then does what she normally does with her victims and cuts her stomach open and takes out the entrails, tossing them into a bucket. Once she had finally ripped the heart out, Silver Spoon's body went completely limp and dead, and Pinkie Pie and Apple Bloom laughed together joyfully as they trotted off with the corpse and the organs in a bucket. Truly a horrifying and despicable act. What if old Pinkie Pie here got a double kill? 20 minutes starts off pretty much in the same way that Cherry Sauce does, right hot off the heels of killing Rainbow Dash. And boy does it, because the first line is literally, "Yay, Rainbow Dash is finished." Pinkie Pie stood there proudly looking at her beautiful creation. It was Rainbow Dash, but stitched all back up. She snipped off the last bit of thread on Rainbow Dash's nose. "Good as new. How do you feel, Rainbow?" Rainbow Dash sat there leaning up against the wall, but Pinkie Pie had stitched her mouth so that it was more of a gaping smile. That way it wasn't so negative around there. "Yeah, well, that's good. Glad you feel a little bit better. Sorry I couldn't put back most of your organs." Rainbow's deformed body slid off the wall into a puddle of blood after some of the stitches ripped open. "Now why won't you stay put?" Pinkie Pie asked, picking up the bloody rag and washing up some blood. So then Twilight Sparkle walks in the She Cube corner and, she's marked as missing on this board for a reason. So, you can guess what happens next. Twilight stumbles down the stairs into the murder basement. Yeah, the one with the skulls and the bone chairs and the entrails and the organ balloons. Yeah, you know the one. Yeah, you know the one by now. You know the drill by now. And gets butchered by Pinkie Pie, who cracks the customary jokes. Pinkie shoved her bloody scalpel straight into Twilight's stomach. Twilight roared with fear and pain. "I know how I can make you feel better. If I taught you to play organs," said Pinkie as she dissected her internal organs. "I also know how to make cupcakes from a pancreas," said Pinkie as she pulled out Twilight's pancreas. "Did I ever tell you I always thought Spike was a cutie?" said Pinkie Pie as she ripped off Twilight's cutie mark. Now I might hear you asking, dear viewer, why is the story called 20 Minutes? Well, that's because, and I quote, "Well," said Pinkie Pie, "Twilight only lasted 20 minutes. What a failure." I'm starting to think that Pinkie Pie might be a crazed serial killer, guys, but I don't think I have enough evidence to prove that yet. Let's just move on to the next story. It's a bit of a left turn, to be honest. This one's gonna be a little uncomfortable. So Muffins was written by a user by the name of Ritana Seshin. I think I said that right. And this one legitimately made me feel a little uncomfortable because it uses the character of Derpy Hooves. And back then Derpy's only speaking role at the time made her sound a little
I just don't know what went wrong.
Yeah, that clip got redubbed for a reason because it pissed off a bunch of soccer moms. Almost got the character removed from the show entirely. But that's a tangent we don't really have time for today. All you need to know right now is that the fandom really only portrayed Derpy in one of two ways. As either a normal character with strabismus, or as a more mentally challenged type of character. And, you can guess which angle this story takes. I mean, this depiction has since changed as people have grown older, and actually we've learned more about mentally challenged people and disabilities. So the story takes place 2 weeks after Pinkie Pie offs Rainbow Dash, and is now preparing to do the same to another pony by the name of Candymane. Now, I can't tell if Candymane is a real character from the show or just the creator's OC. So I just kind of used the first picture that popped up in a Google search. So Derpy comes tumbling down the cellar to the murder basement. Yeah, you know, the one. Yeah, you remember the one. And asked Pinkie Pie if she can make some muffins. And that's when Pinkie Pie got a devilish idea. And I quote, "Well, I was planning on making cupcakes today, but," she paused, thinking. She knew Derpy wasn't stupid, per se, but she wasn't exactly like the other ponies. She seemed a bit mentally challenged, but she was sweet nonetheless. Pinkie didn't want to take advantage of Derpy's childlike mind, but she was having an idea that might actually be good. You see what I mean by how this is gonna go down the route of taking advantage of the mentally challenged? I mean, it's not insulting or anything. If anything, it makes the whole grimdark aspect of the story even better, but I guess it just doesn't sit right with me personally. At the end of the day, they're fictional characters, so who really cares? Like, I can see Pinkie Pie being a cannibalistic serial killer, but not Derpy Hooves. She's a little cinnamon. She's just a little cinnamon muffin. You know, honestly, I thought what Pinkie Pie did to Rainbow Dash was fucked up. But it's even worse what she does to Candymane. Pinkie does the typical thing, you know, cut off the cutie mark, but lets Derpy do one, and she doesn't do it right, so it ends up having to get ripped off because the cut wasn't clean. Things somehow just get worse. And I quote, "What do you think we should do, Derpy?" Well, Derpy thought for a moment and then gave a great hop. "Ooh, can we take away her legs?" he asked happily. So yeah, Sir Derpy suggests that they cut Candy Mane's hind legs off. Piggy says, "Yeah, sure, dude. Let's do that. That's a gnarly idea." And grabs the hacksaw. It's still freshly coated in Rainbow Dash's blood. Derpy takes the hacksaw name literally and tries to literally hack off Candy Mane's leg until she hits bone, and then she actually starts sawing through. It's like I have very like vivid imagination, so as I'm reading this, I'm like picturing it and like hearing the sounds of like the blade hitting flesh and then just like sawing through the bone, and it just makes my skin crawl. This is some good shit. "Oh no," said Pinkie Pie, "I think she's about to faint." Derpy sawed her way through the bone, and the severed leg laid limp, still strapped to the table. Candy was hyperventilating now. "Here, let me do the other one." Derpy handed the hacksaw to Pinkie, and she made quick work of Candy's other leg. She was feeling dizzy, her vision swimming. Pinkie Pie then does the old true gimmick of the good old shot of adrenaline straight to the heart to keep her awake, and it somehow gets worse. "Hey, Derpy, want to see what an eyeball feels like?" said Pinkie Pie, and Derpy nodded excitedly. Pinkie Pie took her scalpel again, along with a spoon, and got close to Candy Mane's face. Yeah, can't really go into graphic detail about that, or else YouTube will bonk me. But yeah, she just pops out. I mean, I guess it'd be easier if they had thumbs, you know, you could just do the old. But she pops out, she cuts out Candy Mane's eye, and lets Derpy play with it, and then she crushes it. Christ on a bike. We're not done yet, folks, because they then use a burning hot knife to draw on Candy Mane's skin. What the fuck? Who comes up with this shit? They then cut her open and have the standard scene of them pulling out the organs and cracking bad jokes. I'm not going to read them because at this point it's getting a little redundant. And then, they keep the continuity by having Apple Bloom come in the end and help. This one definitely made me a bit uncomfortable because of the childlike nature in which Derpy is presented. But honestly, really good idea for a grimdark story, so can't really fault it. Yeah, but you know what? You know what'd be even worse? What if Derpy had a solo project? So this one gives me a bit more of a lighthearted tone, and maybe you'll understand what I mean when we actually get into it. So Derpy's first project is a pony by the name of Roseluck, and she's strapped to the familiar table in the murder basement. Yeah, you know the one. Yeah, the one with the, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, this one kind of makes me chuckle. "Hello," she said with a shy smile, her voice cracking. "My name is Derpy, and you're going to... She furrowed her brow and took an index card from beneath her wing, reading it. "You're going to help me make muffins." She gasped with a wide smile. "Muffins?" Dropping the card, she danced on the spot and then became a little shy again. Some pretty good character writing, methinks. Roseluck is there because Derpy drew her number. More on those later. Numbers, Pinkie. What do they mean? What do the numbers mean? What do they mean? Derpy tries to carve Roseluck's cutie marks off, but doesn't do it correctly again. So she gives up and calls for Pinkie Pie to come help her. Roseluck's response to seeing Pinkie Pie is, again, this is just another great exchange. "Pinkie Pie," Roseluck shouted, "what are you doing? Why are you teaching her these things? She doesn't know right from wrong. She's too stupid to know what she's doing." Pinkie Pie's expression became mutinous, and she suddenly ripped Roseluck's cutie mark all the way off with her teeth. Roseluck shrieked in pain, looking down at her bleeding flank. "Don't you dare call my Derpy stupid," Pinkie Pie screamed. "She is not stupid. You're stupid." Pinkie is written here as like an overprotective big sister, and honestly, yeah, I could totally see that dynamic working with these two characters. With the canon versions of them, anyway. Apple Bloom comes in with a pair of pliers, and Derpy uses them to pull Roseluck's teeth out, and then just fucking chucks them at her just as hard as she can, leaving welts and bruises and scrapes all over her skin. And then Derpy proceeds to turn the operating table upright and then proceeds to kick Roseluck in the legs until her legs are just completely fucked up. The story describes it, and I quote, as a couple of strangely shaped sticks by the time Derpy was done kicking them. You know, cue the usual, the gutting and the pulling out of the organs and the cheesy jokes. And I could read them out, but honestly, they're starting to feel corny at this point. By this point, I thought I was getting desensitized to the violence in these stories, and then I read the next one. So with a name like Payback, you're probably gonna think that this is some sort of role reversal, right? Where it's Rainbow Dash getting payback on Pinkie Pie for the events of the first Cupcakes, or, some sort of alternate telling or something, but, You're wrong. You're wrong. I was wrong when I went into this, because that's what I thought going into this. But no, it turns out it's just another sequel to Muffins. And I didn't know that there were this many sequels to Muffins. So this time around, there's no numbers involved. Derpy has kidnapped a stallion by the name of Spectrum, who it turns out was her bully back in flight school. So this time, it's personal. And I'm gonna be honest about this, I don't really know how much of this I can quote, because literally the beginning, Derpy goes off on a tirade on Spectrum about how much he bullied her back in flight school for being different, and he called her the R word, and she goes on to use that word like several times, and I have no problem saying it in this context, but I'm pretty sure I'd get a community guidelines violation for saying it in a video, so I'm not taking a risk of that. The shit was different back then, what else can I say? Derpy also doesn't talk good in this story. They really lean into the mentally challenged aspect of the portrayal of the character, and well, here's a good example. I quote, "No pony is ever sorry. They laugh at Derpy because Derpy can't fly so good or talk so good. They talk behind Derpy's back. They talk real slow because they think Derpy can't understand fast talking." Yeah. I was really not expecting 3 of these to focus on Derpy hooves, but here we are. Derpy saws Spectrum's wings off, throws hot coals at him, shoves one of the aforementioned hot coals into his mouth, burning the inside of his mouth. She rips his tongue out to stop him from screaming. I can't write shit like this. It's honestly just too ironic. I can't imagine how many kids with unfiltered internet access found this shit back in the day. I mean, I was like 14, 15 when I was first reading these. I can't imagine it. I can only imagine that there were like fucking like 10, 11, 12-year-olds reading this shit, man. Probably fuck some kids up. Oh well, a little trauma never hurt nobody. I mean, look, you know how this ends by now. Just fucking cut from fucking chin to dick, and gets his fucking organs ripped out, and the jokes, and the... it's getting a little tiring at this point. I'm actually starting to kind of lose my mind with this a little bit. So let's just move on to the next and presumably final story in the Cupcakes saga. At least canonically. I'm sure there's more, but I'm getting tired. So Numbers was written by a user under the name of Steppenwolf MLP, and is the final story in the Cupcake saga, or at least it's meant to be. I'm sure there are plenty others out there that have been written since, and are probably going to still come out to this day. But this video is already long enough. Thankfully, this is a pretty short one. Pinkie Pie invites Apple Bloom and Derpy over to draw their numbers. So at this point, I'm just going to infer that the numbers correspond with each pony in Ponyville, which actually kind of does make sense, because Pinkie Pie's whole thing is she's friends with every pony in Ponyville, so it makes sense that she would know all of their names and addresses. Yeah, just normal, friendly behavior. Anyway, they all draw their numbers, and Apple Bloom draws Derpy's number, and Derpy draws Apple Bloom's number, and yeah, that shouldn't be possible. If Pinkie Pie is the one who puts the numbers in there, then wouldn't it have made sense to just take out Apple Bloom and Derpy's numbers when they became her assistants? I mean, because that's what a smart person would do. Although I guess if she wants to keep it a secret, I mean, I guess the old saying is, 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead, so I guess it actually is smart. Maybe you are a criminal genius after all. Maybe. Pinky drugs both Apple Bloom and Derpy with the good old roofie muffin and then injects them with a huge dose of poison that kills them before baking them in the cupcakes. And then it turns out that Pinky pulled her own number, which, again, she's fucking, maybe you're just fucking stupid, because why would you have your own name in the pot? What? Like, that's like Hannibal Lecter trying to eat his own fucking brains. Like, why would you be that stupid to do that? But anyway, she eats one of the poison muffins and dies, and the story literally ends with the remaining members of the main six at her funeral putting her in the ground and being like, oh, she was such a good friend. Gosh, she was such a good friend. How do we lose such a good friend? With Pinkie Pie laid, the rest of the madness is put to an end for good this time. Probably. And that was the big connections between all of them. They're honestly pretty cut and dry, but they're really crazy and all by different authors trying to do their own thing, some better, some worse. But all in all, they're pretty enjoyable experiences. If you know, I recommend reading them for yourself if you want. They're all pretty short. But this was a nice trip down memory lane for me. I haven't done anything pony related since like high school. Never made YouTube videos about it, so here's to hoping I don't get judged too harshly for this one. I don't care. I make what I want. Let me know what you thought of this. See if you like this down in the comments. If you liked it, leave a like. If you don't, and consider subscribing. I'm the wild card, and as always, I will see you next time. Hopefully. Peace.